Welcome to Figuring Out Families by Magellan Media, where we help make families the best they can be. We're pleased to be joined by marriage counsellor and family expert Derek Boylen for what we are calling the Focus Sessions, aimed at helping families with relationship issues. Together with Derek, over a number of these sessions, we will explore the most pressing issues facing families today. We hope you enjoy and find this series valuable. I'd like to welcome back Derek Boylen for another session of our current series. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you, David. It's good to be here again.
And today, this is very exciting. It's not love maps, it's love languages. Please explain.
Yeah, it's thanks for having me again, David. Love languages is such an interesting an idea, and it's sort of become more than just pop psychology in recent years, and there's some really good research around it. So it'd be great to sort of explore that today.
Okay. Firstly, I do have to ask, being totally honest, I didn't know much about love maps. I know even less about love languages. Tell us a little bit about it and where did it all originate from?
Yeah, so love languages is an idea that was first sort of developed by a man named Gary Chapman. And so he was a counselor in the US and a researcher. And one of the things that he noticed when in his work as a counselor, and certainly this has been my experience when I work with couples for counseling, is that often you will have this encounter with a couple who really care about one another. They really love one another and support one another, and they really want their relationship to work. And actually, they're working really hard in their marriage to try and make it work. But for some reason, they're just not connecting. They just sort of seem to miss one another, or somehow can't seem to get it quite right. And what Chapman realized is that sometimes couples have different, what he refers to as love languages. And so he started to sort of develop this idea and explore it with his research, and it's become very, very popular in recent years. And I guess in essence, what it's really about is coming to appreciate that what makes me feel loved in my relationship with my partner or with my children isn't necessarily the same thing that makes them feel loved. And so for us, learning how to love them the way that they need to be loved, to feel loved by us, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And language is the word here, isn't it? It's the important word. A couple can speak the same language, or Italian, English, whatever, but be on different pages in terms of their relationship and not really understand what the other person is saying.
Yeah, language is absolutely the key word here. It was a pretty stroke of genius on behalf of Gary Chapman to really recognize that this works like a language. If I spoke, for instance, English and no other language, and Karen spoke German and no other language, I could spend all day, every day, telling her that I love her, that she means the world to me, that I missed her today, that she looks beautiful, this meal tastes amazing. But actually, for Karen, it would mean nothing. It would just be words, it would just be sounds, and it wouldn't, I guess, convey the warm feelings that go with being loved by someone, by being cared for by someone. And
Sure.
uh, and so love languages they really are like a language. That if we can work out how to love this person in the language through which they experience being loved, then they're going to encounter our love in a much warmer, authentic, fulfilling kind of a way.
Right. Is this an easy concept to understand? On one level, it does sound quite easy, but I'm not sure about on another level.
Yeah, and look, it is quite easy to understand. I guess in practice, it takes a little bit of a bit of time to sort of work out the nuances of it in each individual relationship. But essentially, Chapman, what he realized is that most people have one of about five key love languages. So he talks about five different love languages, and most people, their love language typically falls within these five love languages. So the first one was words of affirmation. So in my marriage to Karen, words of affirmation is my primary love language. So people who have this as their primary love language, they most naturally show their love through their words. They say, I love you. You mean the world to me. I missed you today. You look so beautiful. This meal tastes amazing. And that's typically the natural way I would show Karen that I love her, is through my words, because words of affirmation is my love language.
Sure.
And because it's my language, I feel most loved when Karen does that for me. So when Karen says to me, oh, you look so handsome in that suit, or I really missed you today, or you're such a great dad, oh, my head swells. I can barely fit out the door. I feel good inside. I feel loved because she's
Yeah.
talking my love language, and I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the warmth that comes
Sure,
with
you're
that.
feeling the love.
Yep. The second one was physical touch. And so people who have this as their primary love language, they most naturally show their love through touch, whereas I use words. they'll show their love through a hug, a kiss, an arm around the waist, reaching over and holding hands. And they feel most loved when their partner does that for them. When people do that for them, when if they're driving down the freeway and their partner reaches over and holds their hand, oh man, for other people it's just holding hands, but for them, they notice immediately the warmth and the texture of their skin and the connection, and that feels like love to them. So, for instance, let's say Karen was doing the dishes this evening, and I really wanted her to know that I really appreciated that. My natural inclination, because words of affirmation is my love language, would be to say, "Oh, I
Mm.
really appreciate you doing the dishes." But if
Yes.
physical touch was my love language, I'd probably come up, put my arms around her waist, give her a kiss on the neck, and say, "Thanks." That would be the natural way that I would show my love. Um, the third love language was quality time. And so people who have this as their love language, they most naturally show their love by making time for their partner and for others. They've always got 20 minutes at the end of the day to sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk about what happened. They're people
Yeah.
who are great at organizing quality time. Why don't we go for a picnic this weekend? Or why don't we go for a coffee tonight? And why don't we play a game instead of watching TV? And creating that warm space to be together and to connect. And they feel most loved when we do that for them. They feel most loved when we speak their language and we say, you know what, why don't we go for a coffee this evening? Or, I'll put the kettle on, tell me all about your day. And we just
Yeah.
make that quality time to connect. The
Right.
fourth love language was acts of service. Now, this is Karen's primary love language. And so people who have this as their primary love language, they most naturally show their love by doing things,
Mm.
vacuuming the floor or doing the dishes or, making the bed or, those kinds of things. And they feel most loved when we do that for them. When we know the jobs that they really hate doing, like picking out the rubbish or cleaning the toilet, and we do it without having to be asked or nagged, that is like love to them. They feel like, wow, you can see what he's doing around here and we're a team and we're building our home together. If we see that they're doing something, they're cooking dinner and we sort of say, look, how about I put the rice on or peel the potatoes, like, now we're a team and we're working together to make our home and to share
Yeah.
this meal. And that feels like love to them.
Yes.
So David, because Karen and I have different love languages, for me, it's words of affirmation and for Karen, it's acts of service. What it
Yeah.
means is that, and this I think was the challenge for, families, is that sometimes we can sort of disconnect around that, in the sense that, say I'm coming home in the evening and I want Karen to know that I love her and I missed her and I can't wait to see her. When I walk in the door, my natural inclination is to try and express that in my language because that's what comes most naturally to me. I
Yeah.
walk in the door and I want to say to her, I missed you today. You look so beautiful. I can't wait to see you and I'm so happy to be home. But actually, you know, that will never speak as powerfully for Karen about those warm feelings of being loved as if I speak her love language. If I walk in the door, put the kids in the bath, clean them at the playroom, and help her with dinner, that says to her, this guy loves me. He's home. We're a team. We're making all of this work.
Yeah.
And that's what makes her feel most loved.
Yes.
Um, Similarly, sometimes if I'm on the way home, especially if it's been after a client in the evening and Karen knows that I'm on the way home and she can't wait to see me, she will race around like a mad thing and get the whole house cleaned up. Kitchen benches cleared off, kids are in their pajamas, and everything's sort of sorted when I walk in the door, and that's her love language. But to be
Okay.
honest, because words are my love language, I couldn't care less if the house was a pigsty. If I walked in the
Yeah.
door and Karen said, "I missed you today. I'm so glad you're home. It's so great to have you here." Dishes can be done anytime, right? That's what
Yeah.
makes me feel loved.
Yeah.
But it is kind of
Absolutely.
important for me to look around and say, "Wow, this place looks amazing," because it was an act of love. I
Sure.
think it took me a long time to realize this is going to sound really dumb, but I think it took me a long time to realize that Karen doesn't do the dishes in our house because she likes doing the dishes. She does it because
Right.
it's an act of love. She does it because she knows if there is one job I hate above all other jobs, it's
Yeah.
doing the dishes. And so when she does it, it's an act of love and should be appreciated that way. It's important to say, wow, that really meant a lot to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if Karen had a close second, it would be gifts, and that is the fifth love language. And I know if Karen's had a particularly tough day, I will stop at IGA or one of the shops on the way home, and I'll pick up a mango because Karen loves mangoes. I cannot stand mangoes, but Karen
Mm.
really likes them. And when I get home, and I just say, "Oh, I'll pick this up for you on the way home." What it communicates to Karen is, Derek was thinking about me. Derek cares about me. Derek wants me to be happy, and Derek's gone out of his way to do this, to sort of make me feel loved. And that's really the way gifts works. It's not anything to do with diamond rings and Ferraris or money or any of those sorts of things. The way gifts works is that it says, even when you're not here, I think about you. Even when you're not around, I love you and I want you to be happy. It can just be an SMS during the day or an email that says, I miss you, can't wait to see you. These people are fantastic present buyers. When it comes to Christmas and birthdays, they really go out of their way to really pick exactly the right present. And they feel loved when we do that for them. When we don't leave it to Christmas Eve and go, oh, damn, I forgot to get you a present, but we really put some effort into it. Oh, that makes them feel really loved. You really thought about me. You really cared to put some effort
Yeah.
into it. Mm.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Do you think before this concept was created by Gary Chapman, you would have known exactly what your love language was with Karen? Do you think you would have
Yeah.
known?
Look, I think, in a way, probably had a bit of an idea about it, but it was, but what the love languages, Gary Chapman's work did is it gave us a way of talking about it. It gave Karen a way of saying, look, I know you like to give me lots of compliments and things like that, but that really doesn't do as much for me as you sometimes helping me load the dishwasher or helping you out,
Yeah,
like chopping up the salad
yeah,
for dinner. That really makes me feel loved. And it made it easier for me to be able to say to Karen that I get that, that words aren't your thing, but sometimes when you just notice or appreciate something that I do and put words to that, it really makes me feel seen and it makes me feel, cared about and loved and supported.
right. Yeah, no, fair enough too. Derek, perhaps you could explain how family members may approach or respond to love languages, and they would approach it in different ways too, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. This is not just for couples. This is actually for the whole family. And Gary Chapman has expanded his work to love languages for children and love languages for teenagers and in other contexts. And I mean, it's always the same five love languages. Most people have one of these five love languages, and there's some really good research now by Scott Stanley and Howard Markman, really confirming this idea about these five love languages of words of affirmation and physical touch, quality time, acts of service and gifts. But when you actually look at your own family, everyone has their own unique love language. And so, for instance, one of our sons, our eldest, his love language is definitely words of affirmation, like me.
Yes.
But it's not just any words for him. I guess it's important to keep in mind that each of these love languages has their own unique sort of dialects. And so, for Elijah, our eldest, it's not just compliments. In fact, he actually gets a bit shy around compliments. But words of appreciation for something that he's done, that really means a lot to him, when something is
Okay.
acknowledged. Our second eldest, Isaiah, his love language is quality time, just actually spending time with him, if he's doing something and sitting down and sort of saying, how can I help? And just the two of us working on a little project together, that really creates connection for him.
Yes.
Whereas Nathaniel, one of our younger sons, his love language is no doubt about it is physical touch. He loves to be tickled and hugged and cuddled. There is no amount
Yeah.
of tickles that will ever be enough for him, and it just makes him feel connected and loved and supported. And he's always the
Yeah.
one who'll be the first to climb up on your lap. And so, really, actually working out our individual family members' love languages and working out how to love them in their language
Yeah.
is a really great way to help strengthen family relationships.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, how does an individual let their family know what their love language is? And especially if they're younger, they may not totally understand what they're expressing, or do you just see it as a parent what the child needs? Is it a bit of a two-way thing?
Yeah, I think for us, we found that it sort of emerges in our children over time. I kind of think we sort of thought just because our love languages are words of affirmation and acts of service that we kind of assumed that that's probably what they will have, and yet we've been kind of surprised at how each of them is completely unique in the way that they've experienced love. They're their own little person, and so it is something that emerges with time. I think, I guess in terms of helping them to know how to best love us, or how to help them to know how to allow us to love them, I guess there are a few tips. One is just to tell them straight out. In my
Yeah.
family growing up, I did not grow up in a very affectionate family. So my family aren't all that great at hugs and cuddles and kisses and things like that. And
Mm.
whereas Karen grew up in a family where there was lots and lots of hugs and cuddles and kisses and tickles. And so she brings a sort of an innate knowledge about how to do physical affection to our
Yeah.
relationship. An example would be, I remember years ago, I was just sitting on the chair reading a book one day and the kids were on the floor playing with their Lego. And Karen just sort of said to me, why don't you just sit on the floor? And as soon as I slid off the couch onto the floor, I was still reading my book, but immediately the kids would lean on dad, and my legs become a runway for their aeroplanes, and she
Yeah.
just has an innate knowledge about how to create a more physically affectionate space. And one
Right.
thing I said to my teenagers, just as they were sort of entering into the teenage years, and sometimes parents aren't that cool, but I said to them at that stage, I just said to them one day, I said, listen, you boys, I didn't grow up in a family that was particularly great when it came to physical touch and physical affection, and so sometimes, you guys might need a hug, and I might not really know that, like I might not think to reach out and to give you a hug, but
Mm.
that doesn't mean that I don't want to care about you and that I don't love you. It just means that I don't think of it. So you're always welcome to ask for one. You're always welcome. If you ever need a hug, just come and take one, because I long to give it to you, but I just don't think of it immediately.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that I had that conversation on one level, because we just I have a great relationship with my boys, and even my 18-year-old and my 16-year-old will just come up and give that a tickle, or try and lift him up in the kitchen, or all of those sorts
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I had that conversation, that they feel that that's okay to have that relationship with dad.
Mm.
Um, but sometimes we just need to tell them and let them know. Um, I guess when we experience being loved in our love language, it's important to let them know how much that meant to us. When if your love language is acts of service and they do something for you around the house, make sure you let them know. That really meant a lot to me. Or if
Yeah.
your love language is physical touch, and someone reaches out and gives you a hug, make sure you let them know, so that they can just say, that really meant a lot to me. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed, because that will help to encourage them to know how best to love you in the future.
Mm.
Um,
Sure.
and I guess, just guiding them to know how best to love you when they're open to it. When you do sometimes in families get those moments where you can just say, it really means a lot to me when you do this, and helping them to know what my love language is, and the way that I need to be loved. Uh, Looking for those opportunities is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I love hugging my son. I mean, he's 27, 28 now, but I never hugged my father because he wasn't a hugger. There was a lot of love
Mm,
there, but he was very old school, so it was a firm handshake. But there was certainly a lot of
yeah.
love in the family growing up. But with my son and daughter, I mean, yeah, hugs, you can't get enough of them, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine for you, David, like, developing that way of being with your son. For you, that's new territory, right? You never grew up with that. It's
No.
learning how to be in your relationship with your son in a way that you never had role modeled. But good on you for doing that. I think what a gift to your son.
Yeah, well, I mean, he deserves a lot of credit too because he's sort of like a new age boy. But I think a lot of the younger people are these days, which is really good. I love
Mm,
their honesty and the fact they have these conversations. Sort of a conversation I wouldn't have had with my father. I wish we had, but it was a different
yeah.
era. But
Yes.
these days, it's great. I love it.
Oh, I agree. I think it's fantastic, and it gives me actually a lot of hope for even though we see a lot of family breakdown in our community and our society, it gives me hope that, what, actually we're working out how to do things better. And sometimes it
Yeah.
takes a bit of time for that to emerge.
I think there's no doubt that we are doing some things much better these days, which is good. I agree with you there. So,
Hmm.
talking about love languages and communication, is it all about communication as we've discussed in previous sessions?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes and no to that question, David. I think we've talked a lot about communication, certainly in past sessions, and in terms of speaking to one another and actually having a talking conversation about the things that need to be resolved. I guess what love languages, in my mind, brings is a greater awareness of the fact that in families, we communicate with more than just words. Words is just one way that we communicate, but there are many ways in which we communicate. We communicate with a loving touch or a hug. We also communicate when we reach out and we help someone. Even when it's uninvited or unasked, and we just sort of say, "Look, how can I help?" Or, "Yeah, let me iron that for you." That's a way
Yeah,
that we communicate in our families. That when we um, bring home a little surprise or a gift for someone. It communicates to them, even when you're not here, I think about you, I care about you, I love you. When we make quality time for someone, it says, you know what, actually, you're worth spending time with. You're important to me. I think, love languages really highlights that there are actually lots and lots of ways that in families that we communicate beyond just words.
right. Yeah, no, true. So is love languages an ideal way to better connect with your partner and your family, irrespective of how long you've actually been together?
Yeah, look, I do think that, and
Yeah.
I guess I always have a thought that that it's never too late to give a sincere apology, and sincere, and similarly to that, I think it's never too late to discover new ways of loving someone better. It when we learn people's love languages and we start to do that, it communicates a powerful, sincere desire to see the relationship grow, to see the relationship develop, and it's a way of doing so that really speaks powerfully and directly to that person's way of experiencing love.
Yep.
I guess a healthy marriage and a healthy family life is more than about just maintaining what's happening now, right? We want to constantly grow and deepen that. And so anytime we put the effort into really to be curious about how does this person need me to love them best so that they can feel connected and supported by me, that's always a worthwhile investment. And I think particularly for couples maybe where it's been a while since they've really felt that they've connected, exploring love languages is a really great way to start to rekindle love in a very practical way in their relationship too and in their family life.
Sure. Okay. Derek, any other tips on how couples can get the best out of love languages?
Yeah, look, I do have a few little tips because I think it's if it's not your love language, if one of your family members has a love language and it's different to yours, it can be really hard to kind of get it right to know exactly what's the nuanced way that that person needs to be loved by me in order to feel loved. So let me give you a few little tips around that. So I guess
Terrific.
if your family members' love languages is words of affirmation, then what you really need to keep in mind is that words mean more to this person than it does to other people. So let's say, for instance, they cook dinner for you this evening. Like a normal thing to say would be, "Oh, I really appreciate you cooking dinner this evening," or "Thanks for cooking dinner." But you could also say, "Oh, wow, this meal tastes amazing," or "This is really great," or "Really, it means a lot to me that you went to the trouble of cooking dinner tonight." It's just a bit warmer. It's just a bit more fulfilling and sweeter for that other person. And words means a lot for that person. That's their love language. Or maybe you taste dinner and you kind of think, gee, this is bad. Like, "Oh, I don't like this at all," right? In which case,
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
say is, I really appreciate you cooking dinner tonight and that I didn't have to, right? And I guess my point is that, you know, because they're more sensitive to words, if we're not being sincere, if we're not being honest, they will know in a heartbeat. They'll pick it
Sure.
up straight away. But we can almost always say something which is honest and sincere, that is affirming of the other person. But
Yes.
if you can cover 3 areas in a day, you're doing pretty well. If you can affirm a physical characteristic, so something you love about the beautiful person that they are. If you can affirm a personal characteristic, so something you love about the kind of person that they are. And if you can affirm an action, something that they've done during the day that you really appreciated, you're doing pretty well with words of affirmation.
Okay.
And particularly with children, if you cover those 3 bases, they'll grow up with a really healthy body image, a really great sense of self worth and self esteem, and they'll be people who are willing to take on the world and try new experiences and discover who they are. With physical touch, I guess the key is similar to words of affirmation. It's about remembering that physical touch means more to these people than it does to other people. And
Yes.
sometimes the smallest touches that we don't even really think of mean a lot to them.
Yep.
So with physical touch, I guess the thing to keep in mind is that physical touch means more to these people than it does to other people as well. Just in the same way that words of affirmation mean more to those people who have that as their love language. And so sometimes even just the smallest touches actually are very warm and connecting for them. Something as simple as just a hand on the shoulder as you pass by. Sometimes if I see my sons sitting at the table doing their homework, I'll just sort of come up and put my hands on their shoulders. Those who have physical touch as their love language. And it just, for them, that's warmth and that's connection and says you're here and you care about me and you're interested in my life. And so
Yeah.
it's important to keep in mind that, sometimes even just the smallest touches that you don't really kind of think of actually mean a lot to
Yeah.
them.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
with quality time, I guess the emphasis there is on quality time. So the
Yeah.
emphasis is not
Yeah.
just time,
No.
and it's just time doing things that are meaningful. It might be going out for a coffee, it might be just going for a walk down the road. It could be just having a cup of tea and talking about what happened over the course of the day. But it's really important that it's not just time solving life problems. It's actually time us doing things that bring us happiness and fulfillment. And it's a very powerful message of love when we take the effort to organize the time, in a way that says, I want to be with you. I had an
Mm.
experience one year with a couple, and he realised that his wife's love language was quality time. And so come Friday night, the football was on, and at the same time, it wasn't his teams playing, and so he thought, oh, we could watch the footy, or maybe we could go out for a coffee. And he thought, my wife's love language is quality time, so I might see if she'd like to go out for a coffee. So, but the way he phrased it was like this: he said, "What do you want to do this evening?" Now, the way she heard that was,
Mm.
well, I could watch the football tonight, or I could go out with you for a coffee. Oh, gee, that's a tough choice. Like, what do I really want here? It's not a very powerful message of love.
No,
What
no.
what is a powerful message of love is to say, you know what? I'd like to go out for a coffee with you this evening. That says, I want to be with you. Yeah. Now she might turn around and say, let's stay home and watch, the football. Great, stay
Yeah,
home and watch the footy, right? But the important thing is you take the effort to initiate the time and to organize something, that might get negotiated later, but it says, I want to be with you, is the powerful
yeah,
thing there.
yeah,
With active
absolutely.
service, I guess my hearted wisdom around active service is that I guess the first thing is whatever you start, you must finish. So it's no good putting a load of the washing in the washing machine and then 3 days later go, well, I put a load of washing on and it's now sort of moldy and starting to smell in the washing machine. It's got to come out and go on the
Yeah,
clothesline or in the dryer. It can't just be sort of left there. And often doing something with the other person is really powerful. To just sort of say, look, can I help with putting the rice on or peeling the potatoes or, going out into the garden, if they're gardening and saying, I'll pull out some weeds for you. And the two of us working together as a team on something would be really powerful for those people.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then I guess with gifts, the key there really is it's not about money. It is all about the thought. It says, even when you're not here, I think about you, I care about you, I love you. Gifts is kind of important to Karen. And so, as I said before, and so sometimes if I have a bit of a quiet morning, at work sometimes I will just get a bit of paper out and I'll write her a love letter.
Oh,
And I'll pop it in the mail on the way home from work that evening, and knowing that sometime the next day or the day after, she'll just get this letter from me that just sort of says, "I'm thinking about you and I'm thinking about your day and your week,
mm,
and that I missed you." So it can be daggy poetry that you leave in their lunchbox. It can be an SMS, during the day that says, "I miss you." It can be flowers that you stole out of the next door neighbour's garden. In fact, they'd probably prefer the flowers you stole out of the next door neighbour's garden because you went to some trouble of getting in trouble because you love me. Not that I'm
mm.
advocating for stealing from people's gardens, but
No, not at all. Not at all.
it's about the thought. It's saying, even when you're not here, I care about you. I think about you, and I plan.
Yeah.
I guess
No, that
something that's really important for everyone to sort of ask their families when they want to explore this is that, as I said before, with my son, each of these love languages is kind of nuanced. It has its own sort of dialects as well. And so I always encourage people to, when you realize that maybe a family member has physical touch as their love language or words of affirmation or acts of service, those sorts of things, ask them this question. Say to them, what is it about physical touch that makes you feel loved? What is it about words of affirmation that makes you feel loved or quality time or gifts or acts of service? Because, you don't want to waste your time trying to do a whole lot of things that don't work. You want to get to the guts of the stuff that really makes the biggest difference to them as fast as possible,
absolutely.
and so sometimes, if you're able to say, look, what is it about, physical touch that makes you feel loved? They're able to say to you, well, when you walk in the door, when you come home from work and you give me a big hug, that's when I feel the most loved. Great. Do more of that, right? Rather than
Yeah.
sort of wasting your time doing the things that maybe aren't exactly the right thing. So I really encourage people, just ask that question. What is it about words of affirmation that makes you feel loved? What is it about, gifts that makes you feel loved? So you can get it right.
Yeah. No, fantastic. So, Derek, in summary, some of the key points from this session are?
Yeah, so I guess the key point is that the things that make me feel loved aren't necessarily the things that make other people feel loved in my family, and so it's really important to get to know what it is that makes them feel loved, so that we can do that and love them in the way that they need to be loved. And the love languages gives a great framework for thinking about those things. It highlights 5 main areas where people encounter and experience being loved, and if we can work out how to do that better for other people in our families, it's only going to support our relationships, help us to feel more connected and seen and understood, and it's a great way to strengthen family life.
No, fantastic. I've learned a lot from this session. Love languages. I've found it absolutely fascinating. Thank you for that, Derek. Our next session is on faith and spirituality. What can people expect from that?
Yeah, I think this is such an interesting area, faith and spirituality, and I think often many families don't really talk a lot about it, and yet on an individual level, often that's a really big part of who we are. We're just not sure exactly quite how to have that conversation or how to explore it and how to experience it in our family relationships. And yet, when families are able to do that, it really brings a sense of connection and deeper meaning to life's journey. So I'm kind of excited to explore that area. It's an area of passion for Karen and I that we've been looking at, particularly over recent years in our own marriage and family life, and it's certainly something that we'd encourage every family to explore.
Oh, that's terrific. Derek, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.